Good morning, everyone. This is Deb Henton, the Executive Director of MASA. Welcome to our female school leaders group that meets on occasion, and we are led, thankfully, by Dr. Karen Orcutt, the retired superintendent of Orono. And today she has an esteemed panel that is going to help lead the discussion. I also want to welcome our secondary school leaders who are principals or belong to that organization. Their executive director reached out to me and asked if their females could join this meeting. And I said, sure, we are welcoming of all female leaders in this group. So congratulations to all of you for joining in today. You will hear some good discussion with other female leaders, and I turn it over to Dr. Orcutt.
Thank you, Deb. Good morning, everyone. This is Karen Orcutt, and I have been facilitating this women's network this year. And today it is my honor to introduce a panel of esteemed superintendents with us today. Dr. Reggie Engebritson is the superintendent of St. Louis County and Mountain Iron-Buhl schools. A big job, 2 schools. Did you wave, Reggie? And thank you. And Dr. Kristine Fleischer, superintendent of Orono schools. And Dr. Ray Villebrun, who is superintendent of Nashwauk-Keewatin school district. It's very on. I don't have her on my screen. Does anyone see her? Okay, well, we will begin without Ray, and hopefully she will join us as we move along. So I asked our panel to begin by talking a little bit about themselves and telling you a bit about their background and their situation in their school district. So can we start with Reggie?
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you, Karen. I'm honored to be invited to the panel. My name's Reggie Engebritson. Again, I'm superintendent, a shared superintendent with the St. Louis County School District, which has 5 schools, and the Mountain Iron-Buhl School District, which has 1 school, pre-K-12. And so a little bit about my background. I knew in the 6th grade I wanted to be a special education teacher, and so did some volunteer work in junior and senior high, graduated from Osseo. Yay Orioles, went to St. Cloud State to become a special education teacher. And then my plan was then I taught for 3 years. I had gotten married in there, and after 3 years was pregnant with my first child. And so I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, thought I'd stay at home with a couple of kids and then go back to teaching. But 5 kids later, it took a little while, but I was fortunate to be a stay-at-home mom, and then went back into teaching. And I taught for about 5 or 6 years in the St. Cloud School District, and then became a special education supervisor in the St. Cloud School District for about 5 years. And then at about that time, I knew I wanted to move on into an administrative role. And so tried applying for positions, thought I'd be a principal, but I think I was kind of pegged as special ed after having been in special ed for that many years. And so after about 5 or 6 interviews and nothing happened, and I think the last interview, they brought in somebody who was retired, the light bulb, as Oprah would say, went off, and I went, I don't think it's going to happen in this district. So went on EdPost, looked at jobs, saw a position for an executive director / special ed director in Virginia, Minnesota. I had never been farther than Duluth with 5 kids. You don't travel much. So I had no idea where Virginia was and thought, I don't know where that is. And a few days later, got a call from Bruce Miles, who was doing the search for the position. And he said, hey, Reg, want to be a special ed director? In the back of my head, I thought he's going to say Virginia, Minnesota. And sure enough, he did. And I laughed and said, I don't know where that is, but got off the phone. And again, Oprah moment, the universe is talking to me. So I took a drive up and saw where Virginia was, applied for the position. I got the position, and I was in that role as a special ed director for 10 districts, and also the executive director of a level 4 program for 10.5 years, and then became superintendent 5 years ago for St. Louis County, and then 6 months later for Mountain Iron-Buhl. So not a linear path. So I think my takeaway for anybody is I didn't stay in it the whole time to get to this position. So I'll stop there and let Christy go.
Thank you, Reggie. Kristine.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Orchid. It's great to see so many faces. I know so many of you personally, so thank you for being here as well, and I'm sure it's a busy morning. My name is Kristine Flesher. I am the superintendent of Orono Schools. I've been in education 31 years now. It's just honestly flown by. 29 years in Orono. When I was in 6th grade, I think, Reggie, I wanted to be a Minnesota Viking. So, and it took me a while to mourn that I wasn't going to be, but I still would like to be a Minnesota Viking. In terms of my educational career, though, I started at Moorhead State, and I was an elementary education major, and there was a sign on the wall that said you want to do something different every day and come to this meeting. And I went to that meeting, and it was about how to be a school psychologist. So it's actually still what appeals to me about my current role as well. And I was a school psych. I have a master's degree, a specialist degree. In between, I went to seminary for fun. And then I started on a leadership journey. For 17 years. I was the director of special services in Orono schools, working under Karen Orchid. And then I spent 12 years as a school psych and 17 as a director of special services. And this is my 2nd year as a superintendent. I did a lot of my licensure at Hamlin for director of special services and superintendent, and then finished my doctorate degree in ed leadership at Bethel. I am married and have 2 children. That was, unlike Reggie, that was in the middle of much later in life. I had my children in my 40s, and 2 girls who are also Orono Spartans in 6th and 8th grade. My husband is a chaplain. He's a hospice chaplain. My leadership journey, I would say, was probably one of, maybe reluctance would be a word. I confused positions of power and leadership. And I remember, honestly, it was probably Karen who encouraged me to take a look at that deeper, and then understood a little bit more about influence and what leadership really was. And so honestly, I love what I do. I love organizational leading. I love organizational health. I think of my work as a school psychologist. Instead of working with individuals, now we work with systems and organizations, and those things are really important. I love working as a team and the visioning that goes into leadership. So that's probably where I will start as well. And welcome again to everyone today.
Thank you,
Dr.
Kristine.
Orcutt, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to let you know, I did get a hold of Ray, and she should be joining shortly.
I'm
Thank
on.
you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, great.
I got
That's okay.
sidetracked.
That's okay.
Okay, Ray, you want to take a turn and tell us about yourself?
Sorry. I really was sidetracked. If I wouldn't have saw that message from Deb, I would have totally forgot this morning. So I'm Ray Villebrun, and I'm the superintendent and elementary principal for the Nashwauk-Keewatin School District. This is my 2nd year as the superintendent and elementary principal. This is, I think, my 29th year in education. And I guess my brain has gone on what the questions were, but I guess if I have to give a life lesson of something that I've learned thus far in my career as a woman leader is I regret how much time I devoted to my job versus to my family. And my kids were really young when I started being an administrator. And I didn't realize it until I graduated with my doctorate in 2015. And I could stop focusing on school, and I could focus on my job and work. And I just realized that I had missed a whole lot in my family, and I vowed to never do that again. And I also encourage everybody that I work with that family comes first. So,
Thank you, Ray.
yeah.
Thank you. So we're going to move into some questions about women in leadership and ask the panel if they could share their thoughts with us. And if there's anyone in the audience who wants to speak up on any question, please let us know also, because this could be a very big conversation. So as you think back on your career, did you ever imagine that you would end up in the role of the superintendent? Kristine?
Go ahead, Christy, go ahead.
Never. No, that was not on my radar at all, honestly. Neither was the director of special services. I think that's just been the journey. But there's now, as I reflect backwards, I can see the journey, but if you'd asked my younger self, this was not on something that I probably even would have considered. Honestly, in part because all of the superintendents that I knew were men, that wouldn't have been something that I would have thought was even a possibility for me.
Thank you, Reggie.
I agree. I would not have, if somebody would have told me that. And again, I was a stay-at-home mom for many years with 5 kids. And then after my youngest was in kindergarten, we got divorced. And so I had a bachelor's degree and knew I needed to go back to school. And so that's when my journey started to go for my master's, and then went on for my doctorate. But certainly, never dreamed. I thought, I'm going to get a bachelor's degree, I'm going to be a teacher, and I'm going to be a mom. And that's my life. So.
Thank you. Ray, do you have anything to add?
My dream, so I started as a para in the Rosebud Elementary School in Rosebud, South Dakota. And I was already, I think that I've always been very, like, I know what I want, and that's, I do it, and that's how it's done. And so when I was a para, I looked around at the teachers, and I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I also knew that I was going to be principal. Like, I wasn't just going to be a teacher. If I was going to make true change, I already recognized at that moment, and I was 21, that I needed to be the principal. And I had a goal of getting my doctorate by the time I was 45, but I even though that was my goal, the superintendency never was my goal. It came up as an opportunity for my family to move back to the Boys Fort Reservation, where my husband is from. And so when that came about, I applied for the job and got it. But no, I never thought I was going to be a superintendent, but I'm also practical, and it was only 7 more credits beyond my principal's license. So why wouldn't I do it?
Thank you, Ray. I think how many of us got our superintendent license because it was just a few more credits and we could do it. We had to do that one more step, that one more move up the rung to have that in our back pocket if we ever thought of any reason we might need it. So as you think about that, what do you think, as you all think about that there were men in the job and you hadn't really thought of doing it, what are the benefits that women bring to leadership? What are the benefits that we have in having women in leadership? Reggie, you want to start?
Sure. I think it's just, again, a different, just different skills that all people bring. And so again, I'm to say that we're better listeners or whatever, again, we're all people, but I just think it's just a different perspective. And when I first got the job as executive director, special ed director for the co-op up here for 10 districts, the board consists of the superintendent. So there were 10 men superintendents for the position. And then it was a few years later before Ray became a superintendent in the co-op and a couple others. But so that was a little daunting to have that as for the board to have 10 superintendents for a few years. But so again, I think it's a good thing that women are in leadership, obviously, and just different perspectives, different mindsets, different exchange of ideas.
Thank you, Kristine.
I think primarily, at least in Orono, we're often a system of many women. And so I do think that it's important to have women in leadership. I have to say that it was actually a leadership conference much like this, in addition to Karen over many years, where when I was listening to someone talk about how you balance life, and Ray, to your point of, balancing family, that I thought, wow, well, maybe this is possible. Even though it hadn't been in something that, in my my paradigm. But I think benefits, I see women, and this is obviously a broad generalization, but I think the teaming and collaboration that women can bring to organizations is really important. And I see that. I think for the little girls, with the night that I became the superintendent of Orono schools, my daughter, because I was worried about whether or not I didn't want it to impact them negatively, said to me, wow, Mom, if you can do that, I can do anything. And that's what I think for all the little girls in the organization and those in our lives. It's a really important for everyone.
Thank you, Ray.
And I agree with that. I think that when there are women in the superintendency, we have a different voice and we have a different perspective, and it's not that men can't be caring or empathetic, but it's just different in that relationship. But I also think that I have an opportunity to be a role model for Indigenous people, females especially. I don't know how many of us there are in the superintendency right now in the state. And I think that my doing the job that I do opens up doors for other people, other females, other American Indian females. And it's good for all of us to represent that we are capable of doing this job just like everybody else.
What do you think is the most significant barrier to females in leadership, Ray?
I think ourselves. Honestly, I think I still second guess myself. Even though I'm super confident about things, there are times where I still struggle and did I do the right thing? I don't know. I feel like all the males that I work with, they support everybody. I don't feel like we're any different. Sometimes though, I can say, I've applied for positions and only men have gotten the second interview, or only men have gotten the interview. And that frustrates me when I know the candidates and I know that I had more experience. I had the license, and that particular person didn't have experience, didn't have the license, and got the job. So
go ahead.
I don't know about that. I just think sometimes school boards maybe don't fully understand what women are capable of. And I attended at the MSBA conference, the Swell workshop, and there was one board member in there. So on how to bring more women into the leadership role, there was one board member in that session.
Oh my, thank you, Ray. Reggie, any thoughts on barriers?
I think, again, it's maybe like what Ray said, a little bit of ourselves, or feeling maybe judge trying to balance it, juggle it all. I mean, the saying, you can have it all. I'm not exactly sure how we have it all, you know what I mean? So you have to figure out your own path. And again, with kids and family and grandparents and all the things. So I think it's just that a little bit of maybe sometimes maybe doubting ourselves, can we do it all, or how to maneuver it. And then again, I think it has gotten better. I mean, when I first came on with having all men superintendents, I mean, I can remember having, this is 15 years ago, you know, having to really be cognizant to allow them to talk, you know, decide when I'm going to bring in my thoughts. I was the leader of the co-op, so I knew special ed very well, or felt like I did, and so I felt like they listened. But again, sometimes I think it is, just to piggyback on Ray, I think maybe just the self-doubt. Can I do this? Do I have the voice? And I think that's gotten better over the years, and as we've supported each other.
Kristine?
I agree with everything that Ray and Reggie said. The only other thing that I would probably add is that I actually did a paper in my doctoral work on this topic, and there are biases in hiring practices. And, you know, I think part of that relates to the vision of what people think of superintendents, and those paradigms are shifting, but they still are there. And to Ray and Reggie's points about, you know, experiences, there's a lot of research that backs up that hiring practices reinforce what I would consider status quo.
Thank you. As you think about that, any more thoughts on why there aren't more female leaders in the superintendency? Then let's move
think-
on.
Can I just say one? Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think change takes time. You know, I think about when I even first became a director of special services, or Karen, when you first became a director of special services, it was predominantly male. And then you see that shifting. And so I do think that those changes are occurring. It just is taking time.
Thank you. Did I hear someone else? Okay. What is the most dangerous behavior that you have seen derail a female leader in their career?
I don't know if this is dangerous, but I had a teacher that, and this was a couple of years ago, but she said, why don't you ever show your emotions? And I guess I didn't realize that I wasn't showing emotions, but I don't cry at work. And I don't yell at work, and I think that for me personally, I feel like I'm giving my power away when people know how to ruffle my feathers. So I don't allow them to know any of the things that I'm thinking or feeling unless I'm annoyed. I think that one I can't hide that one. But the others, and so I just think that for women, we are thought to be in stereotypical of not being able to control our emotions. And so to me, for myself, that's one thing I'm always very aware of.
Thank you. Anyone else? Christy, Ray?
I don't know if it's particular to women, but I do think it's dangerous. I was just trying to think of what dangerous to avoid conflict. And I think that's unhealthy for the organization, and the ability to be able to take on conflict and to be okay in the midst of it, even when it might not feel okay, is a really critical skill, critical for men and women. Supervising special education for many years, one of our former attorneys said to me, you know, a lot of young women go into the profession of education and they went in not wanting conflict. And yet there's a lot of conflict. So learning how to do conflict well, I think, is really important, men and women.
Thank you, Reggie.
Not really a whole lot to add, just trying to think too of, I mean, again, just being able, like Christy said, to deal with conflict, to be a good listener. So again, just, you know, I think there is I think it's getting better, but again, that perception of our emotions, or if we're angry, or are we coming across as the bee or whatever, versus being a leader and having to navigate that and be cognizant. I think really about, again, the important thing is to be reflective. And, you know, when you're dealing with conflict or dealing with people, and if it isn't going well, to reflect and go, how did I approach that? How could I do better? Because, it has felt different over the years, being a female leader and navigating up here on the Iron Range, you know, basically male dominant, although that's gotten much better. But so again, just, I think it's important to be reflective. So again, that's not really answering your question of dangerous trait, but
Thank you. But Reggie, that leads me into the next thought. Do you experience resistance when you are leading men? And how do you deal with it?
I'll jump into that one. I think I also was confident, you know, coming in as a special ed director and knowing special ed, that was, I think, a plus in the sense that I was helping guide the superintendents and the principals of 10 districts. But certainly at the board meetings, I can remember I sent an email out to the board and asking questions, and somebody had answered, and I jumped in, and I can remember one superintendent saying, it's important for you to wait till all of them have answered. And it was like, okay. But, you know, so you take things like that or suggestions that maybe I've given, and depending on how they responded. We have an organization up here of superintendents. We meet once a month, and it took 5 years for me to be able to attend that meeting, because there was a superintendent or two who said, no, she's not, we don't want her there. My board was supportive of the 10 superintendents. This was a superintendent outside of the co-op. And it took 5 years of me to go, come on, guys, really? What's the deal? I am a director. I'm running a building. I oversee a principal. So anyway, so interesting.
Yes, Kristine?
Yes, I think I've been really fortunate, but it's not that there haven't been challenges over many years. I would have said that it's about, Reggie, I think to your point, relationship building over time. I have, I've certainly had men that tend to be, I am not a power over person, and have had men approach in that way. And, I think just frankly, talking about that and working on a relationship over time has made a huge difference for me. That's probably been the most important. And I've certainly had people that, and both men and women, but men who've been in more of a, I would consider a power over, where I am able to push back in a way that I think is respectful but clear about my own boundaries. And I think that's also really important, to be able to not be, not how you respond to that power over kind of experience is important.
And Ray?
So last night at our board meeting, we did my yearly evaluation, and one of the comments that one of the board members said was he thought that it was very strange. He wasn't sure how to take me, because some veteran teachers say that I rule with an iron fist and it's my way or the highway. Yet his son is also in my district and he loves me. And I said, well, I ask a lot of questions. I said, and if people don't want, in my mind, if you don't want to answer my questions about the job you're doing, all it does is cause me to ask more questions about why you don't want to answer my questions. And then I start having all kinds of other thoughts. And so I think sometimes they're just not used to being questioned, like I don't know what I'm doing. So I just keep asking the questions.
Love it. That leads me into, how can we be powerful without alienating people? And what if people are unhappy, Ray?
And I let them know from the get-go, I'm just trying to learn. Like I am not using the information for anything except how do we do better for kids. And so because I've only been here as long as I have, and people don't really know me yet. I can see that, especially if they've been doing things the way they've been doing them for a long time. And all of a sudden now some lady who doesn't even know that stuff is asking questions. I just reassure it. I'm not trying to do anything negative. I just want to make sure that we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing for kids.
Thank you. Powerful without alienating, Reggie.
I think, again, it's having those relationships, like we've talked about, building the relationships, really being a good listener. I try to, many times I'll say, I'm going to put my cards on the table so that I try to be transparent and clear. What am I asking about? Why do I want this information, or what is it I'm trying to do? And then I also ask people if they are, depending on the situation and the conversation, maybe asking them, what do they hear me saying? Because people can sit there and nod when I'm talking, and then they leave and go, she said whatever, she agreed with it. And I'll even say, I'm nodding because I'm listening. Doesn't mean I'm agreeing with what you're saying, especially if it's maybe some conflict or trying to understand. So again, just trying to be as crystal clear as I can, transparent, and hope that people feel that I'm listening, but that also trying to get my message across clear and succinctly, and then having them tell me, what did you hear me say? So that, again, trying to build that relationship and that it's clear communication.
Thanks, Kristine.
I'm going to echo some of what they'd said. I had written down, I think being powerful is about being clear with your language, naming things, listening, reflecting, and naming. Sometimes people are afraid to name what's in the room, or what's in a conversation, or what's in a conflict. What are the real fears, whatever else it really is. And I put on my psychologist hat in those moments. I think naming it and being clear is really important. It's important for everybody in the conversation. And it's a very powerful thing to do. And I think it, regardless of whether it's a conflict or whether it's not, I think what I heard across all three is what I would consider really active listening skills and reflection combined with really clear and clear language is important.
Have you ever been afraid on the job, Kristine?
Yes. I would have said, I think there've been multiple times that I've been afraid in some way or another, over probably every role that I've had. I think all of us have doubts, certainly, doubt in the midst of COVID, when things were constantly changing and the noise was so loud. I would say those are doubts. I think the one time that I've been fearful was just we had some of those board meetings that everybody else had probably had as well. And some of those were personal. I don't know that I was fearful for my safety. I think I was more fearful for my children who also attend here and what that means for them. And so that I would describe this difference. There's a whole continuum from what I would consider anxiety, from worry all the way up to fear. And there are times that I would say that I doubt and I wonder, am I making the right decision? And I don't think that's a bad thing as long as I'm not spinning with that. I think we always need to reflect and think about and not be so confident that or arrogant that we aren't doubting and making sure that we're making right decisions and getting all the information. I think fear can be paralyzing though. And so I try very hard, if I do feel those emotions, to reflect and put them in their proper place. But those are the time that I would have said I've been truly afraid were in the midst of COVID. And as I mentioned, I am a parent of two middle school, and at that point, one elementary, one middle school child, and they're little girls who live in this system as well. And they're watching, and those things were hard for me personally. They were hard for our family, and I was probably more afraid. Yes, there were people saying they wanted to get me. I didn't really think that was true, and that it was anxiety provoking, but I was afraid for what would be the impact on our girls. They're doing well right now, but that was scary to me.
Thank you. Fear, Ray?
I think again, thinking about making a wrong decision or a bad decision or it's going to hurt somebody. I spend a lot of time thinking about those kinds of things and being very reflective of trying to see it from every possible angle, and then what different scenarios and how it plays out, and making sure that I have answers to all of those different things. But I can say one of the times that I probably was fearful, and it wasn't myself, we had an incident at one of our schools where there was a petition to get rid of me and one of my teachers. And it wasn't me that I was worried about. It was the teacher and all of the circumstances that were around it. And I was just very worried about him and feared how he was going to react. I knew that it would eventually die down and he didn't have to worry about his job. But that really worried me, that knowing that he had taken the job after taking a break from, I mean, there were just so many dynamics, and I was just fearful for him and how that was going to be, because of course it was on Facebook and everybody was sharing it. And I mean, it was just really ugly.
Thank you. Reggie?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Kristine said. I think the COVID years of every day wondering, is this the day I'm going to have to close school? And then having 2 districts, 6 schools within the 2 districts. And just I don't think it really hit me till even afterwards. And I mean, when, you know, it's like, oh, every day I don't have to think about it. And what are the numbers coming in? And I even got this sign that's behind me that says, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." And it reminds me of how the 2 years of the rough waters of COVID and the decisions we had to make and abide by, whether it was masks or no masks, and people on all sides, and kids and health. And so anyway, just that's a reminder to me every day of again, those lessons that I learned just hopefully made me a stronger leader. But that was a scary time, because again, it's so politicized, and again, we're talking people's health and their lives.
Thank you. I was a superintendent the first year of COVID, and the following year, as we we thought we were winding down, and then we wound back up again. So as you say, COVID, fear hits my stomach immediately. I can feel it again. So how do you encourage women to not give up? Kristine?
I think resilience is critical in our work as educators, because we do fall down and we do get afraid, if we're honest. For me personally, I focus on my purpose and my mission and not the noise. There's so much noise out there, and I think that the noise, if you spend your time in noise, you have to go back and remember, why did I choose this in the first place? Why am I doing this? What's important about it? And for me, I remember my purpose. And sometimes I have it written down. I mean, I've done that, and I have it on my desk. And just like Reggie's sign, I think sometimes we just need to take a deep breath and remember why we're doing this in the first place. That helps me be resilient. There are times that I also, in terms of what else do I do? There are times that I sit at my desk and take 20 seconds or go down to kindergarten. And again, remember why. As soon as I see kindergartners, I feel good. And so I have what I would consider self-calming strategies that I employ, as well as what I would consider refocusing strategies. And then I do work on what I would consider just resilience. How do you get back up? How do you continue? And for me, at least, a lot of that's about focusing on purpose.
Thank you. Reggie?
I think too, if somebody says, I feel like giving up, I think it's really having that conversation, because is it maybe a different path? So, I mean, sometimes I think that term, giving up makes it feel like we're a failure if we give up or change course. And again, supporting each other as women, that if if this maybe isn't the position, whether it's principal or any leadership or whatever you're doing, and you feel like, I don't know if I can keep doing this, then I've had those conversations where you're helping to draw out what is it you want to do, because you're given one life and to be passionate about it. So if you're in a leadership role and you're saying, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this, that's okay. Then find your passion, and not to feel like a failure because, or think that you gave up. You just maybe chose a different path. But again, resiliency, those skills too, but that it's, I think that's where the support of women and being able to process, where do I really want to be, and not where do I, am I where other people think I should be? It's about, where do you want to be? Where's your passion? And if it does go down a different path, that's okay.
Thanks, Ray.
For me, it's just a matter of believing that God has a plan, and things are going to happen the way they're going to happen. And I have control in how I'm going to get there or what I'm going to do, but I don't give up. And if it doesn't happen the way I want it to happen, there was a reason. And usually for me, I see the reason at some point of why things didn't happen the way I wanted them to happen. And I have faith. I just keep moving forward and keeping my purpose in mind, which is always about kids. I don't give up. I just keep going. And part of it is, I tell my staff that too, we don't give up. We try something new, we keep trying. And if I don't do the same thing that I'm telling them, then I'm a hypocrite. So even if I want to give up, I remember, oh yeah, you just told so-and-so they need to keep trying. Well, I need to keep trying too.
Thank you. Tell us about mentorship in your work and how important is it? Reggie?
It's very important. I know Ray is up here also. And so we've had women times where the women leaders up here, we've gone to lunch, and just to be able to laugh and, relax and be ourselves. And again, that support of women. Certainly I've had women mentors throughout my career. Elizabeth Rogers in 287, she was in St. Cloud. And if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have my doctorate, because we sat down and made a plan. I think it was the 6th year of the 7 years you have to get your doctorate done or something. But anyway, I had to write my paper, but just the support. And so I think that's key. So just, I've been influenced by mentors in my life, and my hope is that I can give back and try to mentor and be supportive to upcoming women leaders or current women leaders.
Thank you, Ray.
Well, and when I first started being a superintendent, Reggie was at the special ed co-op. And so I spent a lot of time calling her and asking her questions about different things. And then even after we weren't working in the same area anymore, I still used her expertise because she was a good leader and one I wanted to be like. And so I think having those female leaders that we can look up to is really important.
Thank you, Kristine.
Well, I wouldn't honestly be here without Karen Orchid. So, I think about, she saw something in me that I probably didn't see in myself. So I think that mentors are important because they can give you feedback about who you are and how you function in an organization that are really critical. I hope that I get to be that for someone else in my life. I also think about the mentor relationships. I see many of you, I'm going to call on Deb, even there, you need to have your phone of friends in your work. I remember calling Deb Anderson when I got that special ed complaint and saying, have you done this before? You need to have a group that supports you. So I think their mentors are in a lot of different relationships, even if it's maybe not it's just a challenge or a coworker, a colleague. I see that as a mentor experience as well. And so I think we have to be there for each other. It's really important. And I think especially with women in leadership as you're forging new paths, you know, being there for each other and trying to find people as critically as well as who you're going to frankly bring forward. I purposefully seek out, I would say both men and young women in our organization where you can see their influence and trying to be encouraging to them. I think it's critical. Education needs its future leaders, and I think we need to be really intentional about that, and think about who could you tap that might be interested. And to me, whether it's a formal position of power or if you're noticing things, I think being able to share some of what Karen shared with me early on about her noticings were things that I was like, really? Wow. So, you know, those were not just things that I had noticed. So, I mean, think about that and what you can do over the next week of who you can notice and what you might be able to share and provide positive feedback. I think it can change trajectories and careers.
And
Thank you.
sometimes when you find those people that you want to encourage, you just keep encouraging them. Took 4 years for one of my former teachers to listen and go back to school to be a principal, and now she's going to be done soon. And so it was just my constant, are you sure you don't want to do this? You'd be really good at this. And then name the reasons why I thought she was going to do a good job. And so we just keep encouraging.
Can I just add
So-
one thing, Karen? I turned Karen down 3 times for the job of special services director. And then she finally said to me, you need to come up with a different answer. So FYI, I totally agree, Ray.
I think as you guys talked about phone calls, I think about the phone call of the proverbial reality check and how many times I have said timeout and gone to the phone and shut my door and called a friend or called a mentor and said, I need a reality check. Here's what's going on. And invariably, you get the best advice in those moments. You get the absolute best advice. So I think how important all of those things are. So what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self? Not that any of you are much beyond that, but Ray, you want to start us out?
I think I would tell myself, definitely be patient. Things happen the way they're supposed to happen. But I would also remind myself that I need to take time for my family. If I could go back, I would definitely, I think about missing first days of kindergarten for my youngest son and parent-teacher conferences and all of those things. And luckily my husband could be there, but we need to be able to balance. And I wish I would have done a better job of that. So I encourage anybody who will listen to me that figuring out how to balance family and home is important.
Reggie?
I've thought about this question, and at 25, I was married and pregnant with my firstborn and teaching until she was born. So I thought I was living the dream. So I really didn't, I had it all figured out. So and again, I've kind of like with Ray, life happens, and again, how to deal with it. So I mean, I can't really honestly say that I wish I'd had more patience or done something different. I think just trying to be as present in the moment of my life all along throughout the years. So.
Thank you. Kristine?
I think I would tell my younger self not to worry so much. I think as I am a person of faith as well. And so I think I would say, trust more, worry less, and be open to possibilities. It just took me a while, but I think that to worry less is important, and you don't need to keep trying to think about it and spin it in your head. I would trust and rest more.
Rest. I love rest. So you're leaving today and new people are coming in. What advice do you give to young women entering the profession? Reggie?
don't be afraid to ask questions and ask for help. You really, it's impossible to do this all on your own. You really have to have people with you. So find those good friends, find the mentors, find the people. It can be, as I say, lonely at the top, and finding those people that you can trust to just say, you know, I'm struggling, or get another perspective. And so, but if anything, if nothing else, if you don't remember anything, you really have to reach out, and that's okay. And it's not a sign of weakness.
Great.
I agree. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And as much as I don't like making mistakes, I have to forgive myself when I do make mistakes. And so it's okay. And it's the same thing I tell my staff. It's okay to make mistakes as long as we're learning something from it. It doesn't mean we like it, but let's just be okay with the decisions we've made and move on.
Thank you. Kristine?
I would echo the finding colleagues, develop a trusted team, you know, and develop a trusted team in even your workplace, because I believe that can cascade in the organization. I think as a leader, my most important lesson, I learned this in seminary, was be someone others want to follow. It's different than being someone others like. You know, you hope that's the same, but be someone that other people want to follow. And I think that, I think that's the intrinsic motivation part of leadership. And I think part of that's about authenticity. It's about transcendence, which I think is being able to focus more on the organization than on your own personal self. And I think that takes a lot of work and reflection to do that, but those would be my 2 cents. It's something I work on all the time still.
If I could just add, I work hard to do this job with integrity, and so that I can sleep at night, so that I have those tough conversations, because otherwise I'm up at night and it's spinning in my head. So when you have to have those conversations, you do say what you need to say, be clear, help people to understand, you know, again, what do you hear me say? And so I really have, I think that's where, are there sleepless nights? Yes, but for the most part, I really, every day I do this job with integrity so that I can sleep at night and feel I did my best.
I think too, similar to that, about having those tough conversations. I find when I'm having a conversation with somebody about having a difficult conversation, they always say, I don't like confrontation. And my response is, who does? Like, that's not my favorite thing, to have those difficult conversations. It's just something that we have to do. And if we do it without malice, like, we're just trying to figure out how to make things work for everybody. And so I think people assume that because I'm in charge, I like confrontation or difficult conversations, and I don't like them any more today than I did 15 years ago. The difference is I know they have to happen. I don't have to take those deep breaths where before, when I'd call a parent and I'd pick up the phone and breathe hard and then hang up and be like, nope, can't do it yet. And then pick up the phone and do that a few times. And then finally be like, okay, now it's just pick up the phone and have a conversation. So it comes with time.
That concludes our questions. I thank you all. Very, very amazing panelists. And I think that this has been a very worthwhile discussion. We've had 3 leaders today, 3 very smart women who had really not ever thought about going into the superintendency, because it really didn't seem like something available or within reach. And they describe it because of their kindness. They describe the reason for that is because there's a business of change that needs to take time. And we take time in making change, and that there will be more leaders who are women in the future. And we look, they talked about working hard to include others and to be understood and to have others understood. There was a tremendous caring about how you bring others into the fold and continue to work with them to be understood. Some fear of making wrong decisions, some fear of what can happen to family, and some fear of what happens to those around them. What unbelievable traits. And some strong advice on spending time with your family and spending time without the noise and taking time to stay on purpose and doing some things that are self-calming and thinking about sometimes, is there a different path? And lots of flexibility and thought, lots of ability to make transitions and be able to think, we're going to get through this and we're going to continue on. Real attributes of resiliency. But a real importance of supporting each other and finding your ability to find others in your work and find a team in your work. And some thoughts about there's a reason and a purpose for things happening and how we accept those things and how we move on because of accepting those things. And that we don't need to give up, but rather sometimes we might need to change course. And some thoughts about mentorship and some women about encouraging others and just becoming teams in our work and supporting each other and influencing each other and how important influence and encouragement are in our work. It's critical. And the importance of family and the importance of worrying less in our work and trusting more in our work. And some strong advice to find colleagues and ask questions and team and be someone who others want to follow. So we thank you all today, and we thank all of you who came today. I'm sorry we didn't have more time for discussion. I wish you all a very happy Valentine's Day, and I ask you to be sure to take time for yourself today. Take care.